Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Very, very good afternoon. Turn the lights on, that'll help. Very, very good afternoon. Wednesday the 12th of March 2025. What I'm hoping to do, for those of you new to me, my name is Farage and Lowe. What I'm hoping to do is, as we now move forward, I am trying to get a routine together on top of our Sunday evening transmissions, and one of the anchor points, and one of the natural anchor points, is Wednesday afternoon immediately after Prime Minister's questions. So that is, today's the first of them, and the purpose of these, probably about half an hour, 45 minutes is the intention. The purpose of these Wednesday afternoon broadcasts is to go through some of the key political stories of the week. So some of the key emerging stories of the week in my own way, own way of doing this. So I'm not here to repeat what a lot of the commentators are saying or doing. I'm just here to give my own perspective, my own analysis, and let you make of it whatever you want to make of it. So it's on national issues or international issues, whatever is the flavour of the week. So that's where I'm going with it. So thank you for joining me for the first of them. And there's only one story in town this week, and that's regarding the internal fallout within Reform. Now, I'm seeing some of your comments. I'm not interested in taking sides on this, and you'll see what, I'm an analyst, so I will provide political analysis, and maybe you'll take value in it, maybe you won't, but that's the purpose of what I'm trying to do on a Wednesday afternoon, is to educate you. And one of the first lessons I was taught when on these issues was about wearing your assumptions lightly. There are layers to what's going on, and to take the time to step back and look at the big picture and try and make sense of some of the layers. So that is the purpose of what I want to do. I'll just pick up on one issue before we start, and I made reference to it on X earlier, but I wanted to pick up on it here because I saw it here. Get this nonsense out of your head now, every one of you. And sorry, Kim, I don't know you, I'm not picking on you. Get this nonsense out of your head. I said it at the time, and I'll say it now. Reform do not have the powers to launch any form of statutory inquiry. This is not about money. This is about powers, and only the government has powers. And likewise, Rupert Lowe does not have any powers to launch a statutory inquiry. Again, this is about powers that the government only has. So using the rape gangs as some sort of political football between one side and another, I'm disappointed, because I've spoken with Rupert. I know other people in Reform. Let's put this to one side. Your bickering has got nothing to do with this issue, and neither Rupert Lowe or Nigel Farage or anyone else outside of government has the power to launch a statutory inquiry. And if you follow my work, you will know that I have made this clear from the beginning, that it is my viewpoint that January and what took place in that vote was one milestone, and we have another 6 years to go. So please, no more of that. And if anyone asks you, they don't have the powers, and they shouldn't be misleading you. This issue is more than about the bickering between two people, or more than about party politics, and it disappoints me when I see that. Disappoints me when I see that. Okay. If you find value in the transmission in this work, please, new Wednesday afternoons, like, share. Hopefully we'll raise our profile and we'll get a few more people watching and listening in. Let me do what I do. Yeah, okay. Reform. Okay. You've got this party called Reform. Here he says, trying to do what I do, and that's not the one I want. Here you go. There's this party called Reform. And Reform, in terms of its politics, has got to work this way. In terms of its audience, in terms of its voter base. One, it's the Conservatives. So it's the Conservative voters who were disappointed by the Conservative government and not fulfilling their promise. Yeah, failed us 14 years and they didn't do what they promised to do on a whole host of issues. So Reform are naturally pulling Conservative voters away from the Conservative Party, and of course Lee Anderson was a former Conservative MP. On the other hand, they have got the working class Labour vote. That's the white working class Labour vote. So in towns such as mine, it's the white working class Labour vote that went and voted in the thousands for Reform. So that's the two sort of political spectrums. Then what they are hoping to do is attract the non-voters. So the people who traditionally have disengaged in politics and no longer vote. And it's an increasing number. And the last big strand of their audience, of course, is the politically right. And I'll say right wing here. And I'll quantify it as we move along. So those are the four strands of Reform's voter base. And what Reform as a political party have got to do is try and make sure that they can get as many of the votes from these four key target groups. And without that, they can't win an election. You've got to bear in mind, they've got 5 MPs. And to win an election, they need, what, 300? In 4 years' time. What they're trying to do is, and what they've set out to do is the steepest of climbs. And not as before this fallout. So what they're trying to do is all of that. They've got to try and keep all 4 of these segments on board. Right, you've seen that. Let me get rid of that. So let's have a quick review on who Reform actually are. What it is they actually are, who they actually are. And thank you, of course. Please do support me. Thank you for the super chat, Mary. 99 pence, massive difference to me. Honestly, makes a massive difference to me. So thank you very, very much. I'll do my please help me in a bit. Let me carry on with this. So Reform UK positions itself as a party focused on challenging the political establishment, reducing bureaucracy and advocating for policies they claim will put the British people first. Thematically, the core principles revolve around 9 themes. 9 themes, says the man from Recusant 9. Sorry, I am looking at the comments as well. Yeah. So, the first of the themes is around sovereignty and national identity. So they've got a strong emphasis on British sovereignty, especially post-Brexit. Of course, it came out of the Brexit Party. And resisting globalist influences. Reform pushes back against policies they see as eroding national identity, such as mass immigration and political correctness. Now, each time I mention one of these, and I'll go back to the board, you've got to think, okay, which one of these resonates with these four groups, with these four distinct demographic groups? Border control and immigration. Reform advocates for strict immigration policies, particularly stopping illegal migration via the channel. They support tougher enforcement measures and want to significantly reduce net migration. They've also got a theme around economic growth and tax reform there, and they argue that the UK's tax system is too high and stifles business growth. And their proposals include cutting taxes, reducing public sector inefficiencies, and simplifying regulations to boost productivity. They've got a clear theme around freedom of speech and anti-woke policies, and they oppose the encroachment of what they make reference to as woke ideology in institutions, from education to policing, and they call for protection of free speech and rolling back diversity quotas. A lot of this is very similar to what Donald Trump is doing in America. You can see energy independence and cost of living. They criticise net zero policies as too expensive and unrealistic, and instead advocate for domestic energy production. So North Sea oil, gas, fracking, all of that, to lower energy costs. Law and order. They call for tougher policing, longer prison sentences for serious offenders, and more resources for frontline officers. They argue that crime is out of control and that political correctness has weakened law enforcement. Government reform and accountability. They frequently criticise career politicians and the civil service for inefficiency and corruption, and they have plans, proposals for an overhaul on government operations, including reducing the House of Lords and cutting wasteful spending. NHS and the public services is the eighth one. They claim to support the NHS. They advocate for radical changes, which includes reducing bureaucratic inefficiencies and exploring private sector involvement to improve service delivery. I think they're basically saying you get a universal right to this, but you can top it up if you want. I think I'm not that advocating it. The way they see it is they're being pragmatic. The NHS is broken, and as it remains, it will continue to be broken no matter what we do. So they're looking at a radical way in which to build on that. And last but not least, they are about democratic reform. They propose reforms such as proportional representation, devolution of power away from Westminster, and direct democracy mechanisms like referendums on major issues. They've also talked about what one of my bugbears is reform on postal voting, that sort of stuff. So that's what the 9 principles are. And what they've done with those 9 principles is they've gone away and looked at the voting patterns. Now, you have to accept, we have to accept that this is an echo chamber. Increasingly in society, we only speak and engage with people who share our viewpoints. It's a failing of ours in society, because then when we engage with people who are different to us, we often resort to name calling and bickering and playground, the worst sort of playground behaviour. So if you look at those 9 themes, what has been happening over the last, since Labour got in, is that reform haven't been, or those who advocate online to supporting reform, and even the branches that have come together, and I've gone away and looked at a few of the branches, what they focused on. Listen, Kim, stop talking nonsense, please. It's nonsense. He cannot do anything regarding an inquiry. Just accept that I know what I'm talking about on this. And I'm not picking on Rupert Lowe, because I made reference to this when Nigel Farage first announced it. They can do nothing Because if they could do something, they would have done it by now. There are other things they can do. And I've offered all of them, including the Conservatives, to contact me, and I have a range of other things that they can do on moving this along. But they cannot launch an inquiry, they cannot host an inquiry, they cannot facilitate an inquiry, they can't do anything like that. Okay? So what Reform have done, the policy people behind the politicians, they've gone away and looked at the polling. And you think the polling is increasing. I thought the polling increasing, and every time they put it forward, the polling's increasing. We're now 2 points behind Labour. We're now level with the Tories. We've now gone past the Tories. All of that. They're looking now at actually how they go about winning an election. And politics is a dirty business. And this is what took place. Again, this is my analysis. This is what's took place. The most vocal, the people who needed to find a home, who perhaps in the past would have voted UKIP or would have lurched towards the genuine far-right parties, but actually are decent people who don't want to lurch that way and looking for a mainstream home. They gravitated towards Reform. And they spoke passionately about the issues that they felt was most important to them. And it wasn't democratic reform, it wasn't NHS and public services, it wasn't energy independence and cost of living. It wasn't any of those things. It was around immigration, and it was around national identity. Sovereignty. And I'll go through some of the themes that I've seen play out myself. So first and foremost, of course, the grooming gangs and law and order. And we saw Reform presenting itself as tough on crime and corruption, which includes addressing the failures in tackling grooming gangs. They all talked about it, but Reform, to their credit, I'm trying not to sneeze. Reform, to their credit, had it in their manifesto. They had it in the manifesto. And they also highlighted the failures of local councils and police forces in exposing and prosecuting these crimes, often pointing to political correctness as a major reason for inaction. What they've gone on a journey in the last 2 months or so is based upon based upon the information we are releasing. They now understand that it isn't about political correctness, it's far deeper and more dangerous, to do with the exchange of votes, which, adds to their position. And they pushed for harsher sentencing and a zero tolerance approach. So Reform are the ones who talked about sending people back, deporting criminals, more so than anyone else, and they meant it. So there's that, yeah. But when they've done their market research, hasn't cost them votes. It's a universal win. Yeah. So on the other groups, the Conservative side, the white working class Labour voters, on the disengaged side, it's not cost them votes. They've gone on around halal meat and animal welfare, and I've seen some of the posts around halal meat, and I'm a Muslim, by the way, so I accept that. I accept there's a whole host of issues around stunning and stuff. I remember, I'm old enough, I'm from a generation where halal meat didn't exist, and I remember as a child being traumatized holding a chicken whilst my dad slit its throat. So I'm of the school of thought that if people had to kill their own food, there'd be a lot more vegetarians out in the world, however you kill your food. So I get that. But what is coming back is that the halal meat argument is actually a veneer to attack Muslims. Not from me, but some of the people who they want to get the votes from. And people are increasingly distancing themselves, thinking, okay, this is actually a far-right party dressing up as this. And if you perpetuate, if you keep talking about minority groups, if you keep talking about Muslims, if you keep talking about the same themes in the same ways, when you've got 9 themes that your party is built upon, the voters you want to get increasingly step back and think, actually, what is this about? What is this about? You then obviously have the anti-Islam and cultural identity issue. Reform doesn't openly brand itself as anti-Islam, but many of its voters, including some of you, I would imagine, are anti-Islam. And one of the main issues they had with Tommy Robinson, was Tommy Robinson's viewpoint on Islam and the banning of Islam, and you know, if not him, there's some of the people who are around him. And what that does on the polls, because this is about politics, what that does on the polls is it hurts them politically. Yes, of that chart I grew, those on the right-leaning, politically right-leaning, say, yeah, we've got a party, this is exactly what we want. The other three groups, they lose voters. And the pushback against woke culture includes the opposition to things like Sharia law. I'm opposed to Sharia law. Separate legal systems, Islamist extremism. I've been fighting Islamist extremists all my life. But the way in which it's portrayed, and you see it, all of you who occupy this social media space will see it. Islam needs to be banned. The Prophet was a paedophile, so on and so on and so on. It takes all of it to a place where, whilst it might shore up that historic far right sort of voter base or right-leaning voter base, I mean, I'm not saying this in any way of criticizing any of you. Your political views are your political views. What you end up with, and I think as Kim is demonstrating to me here, what you end up with is you lose votes. You just lose votes. Politically, you lose votes. And there are things you can say and you can do on some of this that you win votes, and there are things that you can perhaps not to do in the way you have done where you lose votes. So for instance, another one where you win, of course, is the free speech one. It's the one to do with the Islamophobia stuff and the backdoor blasphemy laws. Again, if you look at that chart I drew at the beginning of the 4 voter bases, all 4 voter bases, that message resonates with all of them. Now, what Rupert Lowe found himself doing, and I don't blame him. I think I like him. I'm on record to say I like him. I've spoke to him, I like him. I think he's a genuine man who isn't a politician. He's been outmaneuvered, and I would imagine he's appalled by what's taken place. You can keep pushing this, Kim, and please do keep pushing this, but you're going to end up in a place where you're not going to get the votes. Not through reform, anyway. And I think that's very clear with what's come through. So, put to one side how they fell out with each other. The real underlying reason is that Rupert was seen as an ambassador of the viewpoint of the people on the right, and the number crunchers inside reform were realizing that whilst this grew, the ceiling was only so high, and no matter how many votes you came in this way, you would be losing 10 times the votes you needed the other way. And that is what has took place. unfortunately. That's what's took place. And it's ruthless, and politics is ruthless. And that is the undercurrent of what's taking place. And I'll show you some recent polling that's come out. So you'll think they're losing votes now. As a consequence of this, they're losing votes. As a consequence of the falling out and the ostracizing of Rupert Lowe, they're losing votes. Have a look at some of the very recent polling that's come out. It's framed in a way that all of this is framed. It takes sides. I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying at all. It's got nothing to do with the Muslim vote, because on the chart I grew, I didn't put the Muslim vote there at all, in terms of those who attract reform. And you say they're losing votes because of the way they handled it. I think I agree with you. They're losing votes because of the way they handled it. 100%. But if they continued on the course that it looked like a certain group within Reform, or who had become aligned with Reform, wanted to shift it, Reform would have ended up as a far-right party, and they would not be winning elections. And I agree, some horrible things have clearly gone on in the background, Mary. Some horrible things have gone on. And a decent man has been demonized. I'm not, I think that's clear. So here we have some polling. And I'll just pull that thing, wait for that thing to go away. A comment to go away. Ignore the heading. Do you think Reform UK would be doing better or worse under a different leader to Nigel Farage? So it's loaded, it's from YouGov, but it doesn't matter. Forget the All Britons one for a minute. Have a look at the Reform one. 21% think that it would be doing a lot better under a different leader. And 12% believe a little better. That adds up to 33%. At the other end, as in, is Nigel Farage the right leader? 16% believe he's, if it wasn't for Farage, they'll be doing a lot worse, and 18% a little worse. That's 34%. So you can see what's gone on here. It's neutral. In terms of polling, outside with the voter base. Outside with the voter base. Outside of the voter base. They're gaining votes. Because they're leaving behind an element of people, or they want to leave behind an element of people who have views and opinions that they believe will cost them votes. Now, what do I mean by that? They've not hidden it, have they? Nigel Farage hasn't hidden his contempt for what he describes as the far right and the Tommy Robinson fans. Richard Tice, I think, was on record referencing people as that lot. So if you have those views and opinions, I think what Reform are saying by the ostracizing of Rupert Lowe, because he was the conduit through which those people could amplify their views and opinions within Reform in that way. And again, I'm not criticizing him, I like him. But Reform have made a decision that to get to the next general election and win, then those views and opinions need to be marginalized within the voter base. And they have 9 themes 9 foundations to what they believe in, that they want to promote. Now, of course, there's other things going on. Leadership struggles, the fighting between one man and another man, the issues around the democratization of the party. All of that is taking place in the background. 100%. But what I wanted to share with you, was take a step back, look at this from a purely analytical perspective, without emotion, and you'll see what they're doing and you'll understand why they're doing it. And again, I do not agree with it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but you need to understand what they're doing. They have decided to cut off a certain group and say to them, actually, if you want to get on board, this is the conditions in which you get on board. And if you don't want to get on board, then go and find someone else, because they've done the calculations. And the calculations they've done wants you to go and say, okay, we'll set up a new party. I'll be honest with you. You can't set up a new party like this and get the national traction to even win a local council seat, never mind go all the way to winning anything at in a general election. Maybe Rupert Lowe and Miah MBE will combine, and maybe they will form a political party. And if they do, I hope that it becomes a home towards those people who otherwise will go on a journey that I am against. But that is what has taken place. And I read that, I see that, but I say this to you as well. They're not hiding it, are they? Nigel Farage's establishment, Richard Tice's establishment. Lee Anderson was a member of the Conservative Party. So, that is what has taken place here. It's a cold, calculated, ruthless political decision where Reform have looked at it and said, okay, here's a whole host of views and opinions that are gaining traction within our movement, and we are uncomfortable with it because it won't get us to the place we need to be to win. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, and I definitely am saying that a decent man has suffered in the middle of all of this. That's what's took place. I hope you found value or so. I mean, it's as simple as that. I'll take some questions. I'm happy to take some questions before we pull up. I want these Wednesday afternoon things shorter, snappier. I hope you found value in them, please. And I'm looking at my own income streams as well, because I'm nothing like these men. I'm not the millionaires that these people are. I live on a shoestring. There's over 200 of you watching this live with me, 900 of you, so I know this is popular. Oh no, this will be good. So please sign up to Redwall and the Rabble, even if it's on the free. If you can, sign up to the 75 pence one. It costs you, it's pennies. Come on, people, it's pennies. But those pennies add up to me and make a massive difference and keeps me going, and we're struggling. And Tony, I'll bring this up, sorry. I think what's gone on there, and I agree with you, I've got problems with Reform in my backyard, in my own hometown. I won't have anything to do with them. And I try and stay away from it because I know I don't want to get involved in some sort of bickering. And I look to Labour, I look to the Conservatives, and I know people are politically homeless and they're desperately hoping that Reform is the answer to their prayers. I know many of you are. All I'll say is it should be democratic. And now let me explain. Let me show this up. Let me quickly show this so you understand what we mean by democratic at a local level. We have branches. So a political party has branches. And the branches elect a chairman who then has members. And between them, they select the candidates. And they also inform policy. That's effectively what a democratic party looks like. Members select positions, select candidates, inform policy. It's as simple as that. What we've got, and I can only talk about it from my own experience, so, you know, I'm not talking about it, I'm not being negative, I'm just being factual. What we had in Oldham was someone from Reform HQ appointed an interim chairman who then appointed his mates to become the board, the branch, key positions. They're now looking for candidates, and you've got the members here, sat here, not able to do anything. They're looking for candidates where they vet and approve candidates not by the members voting of the branches, but by the chairman, the interim chairman, deciding who can go forward, and vetted externally by HQ somewhere. This isn't how a political party works. Or should work. And Farage knows this. So the question is, why? The question is why? And for me, I think he's still burnt by UKIP. And in the end, he lost control and the party did get taken over by a right-wing element. And the branches, and those who are active, are, of the four groups, they're not the Conservatives who are coming and joining the branches. They're not those who never vote, those who don't vote, that, you know, you struggle to get them to vote, never mind come and take up positions in branches and become members. Some of them are the marginalised white working class historical Labour voters, but a lot of them who are coming forward, in my experience, is those with those right-wing views. And I'm not here to say those views are right or wrong. That is a conversation for another day. So that is where we are up to with what Reform are doing. Why I think they're not letting go. They're scared that their party will be hijacked. And they're not unique in this. Across the country, I've seen Labour Party branches are suspended, where head office decides what goes on, because they don't trust the members or they think something's gone on where the members are up to mischief. As for Zia, I don't know who Majid did, but as for Zia, the chairman, in a different world, mate, I don't know if it was or not in Reform, I'm not close enough, but in an ordinary world, those positions are elected positions, aren't they? And I'm so disappointed. You know what I'm disappointed with, Linda, most of all? Everything I've shared, I talked about. This could and should have been resolved behind closed doors. bickering like children. Online, on X, through the national media. Hurts all of us, doesn't it? Because all of us hoped it would be different. I still hope it can be different, by the way. But all of us hoped it would be different. Mate, I can't. This is not what I'm here. I'm not here to be a voice for Muslims, so I'm not here like that. So I see plenty of people who don't criticise criminals. I see people who look the other way. The vast majority of this country, mate, ignores the cover-up of the gang rape of working-class white girls, as it's none of their business. It was, wasn't it? It made them look amateur. It made them look amateur. I saw her. Isabella Oakenshaft. I saw her. And I listened to what she had to say. And it saddened me because it was clear to me that, you know, I think Rupert found himself in a position where I don't think he realised what position he found himself in before because he's not, and he'll be the first to admit, he's not a politician. He's not a politician. There you go, Chris. So what do I suggest you do? I suggest you don't take sides and you try and get these people to understand that if Reform isn't a functioning political party moving into the May elections, then we lose. And if you believe someone else can come along and just set up a political party, you're deluded. They can, it just won't happen for May. Well, they got 9 themes, and those 9 themes should be different. But they don't know yet. It's an embryonic party, I think, Claire. And I agree with you. Do they really want to be different? I don't know. I don't know. Right, that's me done. I don't want to talk too long. If you find value in my work, please like, please share. Please, at the very least, buy me a coffee or subscribe to Redwall and the Rabble. My subscription numbers are extremely low. I've had 2 donations come in that will keep me going for all the paid subscribers I've lost for the next 6 weeks or so. And then after that, I run into extreme difficulties. So please, it's 75 pence a week. Most of you haven't, most of you don't. I don't know what more you want from me to encourage you just to bloody sign up to Redwall and the Rabble for 75 pence a week. I have got more on the rape gang stories that I will bring back. I'm not sure if they'll do it tonight or I'll do it tomorrow. I'm trying to get into routine so you know when I'm coming on. So Sunday night is a definite. Wednesday afternoon is a definite. I'm trying to work out when else to come back. But I've got more that needs to be shared before Sunday. If you find value, and the only way I know you find value is at the very least like the comments. And I've also, don't like what I've got to share. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not a politician. I don't care. I'm here to tell you the truth as I see it. A very good afternoon.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.